A former police officer is fighting for his freedom in court. His wife shares details about the Soros-funded attorney general who led the case and the juror accused of lying. Next. Lacy Lunsford is my guest. Lacy, your husband Brad is a former Las Cruces, New Mexico police officer. He was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter in February. Thank you for joining me and speaking out about this.
Thank you for having me. We really appreciate it.
Truly tragic. It was back in 2022. Your husband was a police officer. He responded to a call about a stolen beer at a gas station. The suspect, a man named Presley Easy, wasn't complying or cooperating, so your husband, he waited for backup to arrive. But when the other officer arrived, he fell. He hit his head in this scuffle. The suspect gets on top of the other officer, steals his taser, and that's when your husband, who feared for his life and the life of the other officer, shot and killed the suspect. All of this recorded on body camera video. An internal investigation cleared your husband of any wrongdoing. He was back on the job. But then it's a year later, the New Mexico Attorney General, who was backed by George Soros and also previously worked in the Obama administration, he decided to prosecute your husband. What were you thinking when those charges were announced? And again, when all of this time had lapsed and your husband is back on the job?
You know, he called me that day from work, and you could tell he was crying. He was really upset. And my first thought was someone had died. You know, we were never expecting him to be charged, and we were flabbergasted that he was being charged. You know, he was cleared, he was back at work, everything was okay. And then for them to drop these charges, it was so shocking.
And your family has been, I know, through a nightmare ever since. Well, this happened in New Mexico. Your husband's case certainly has a lot in common with the prosecutions of police officers here in Minnesota and other places where agenda-following attorneys have pursued hindsight prosecutions against law enforcement. So your husband, he was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. He'll be sentenced next month. He could face up to 10 years in prison. Talk about that moment in court back in February and what's going through your mind when that verdict is read.
When we heard the guilty verdict, we were just shocked. I think the whole courtroom was just in complete shock. Nobody expected this to happen. You know, the prosecution, their whole trial, it was just ridiculous how incompetent they were. And then we found out stuff later that made everything make sense with the jurors and the foreperson. But at the time, we were just in complete disbelief.
Yeah, making the situation even worse, you're talking about that. A lot of information about the trial. The jurors has come to light since. The similarities between some of the trials against law enforcement, again, here in Minnesota, they're difficult to overlook. But give us a little bit more insight, specifically about the jury. And I know that there's a new attorney on this case now as well.
Yeah, we got a hold of Matt Chandler, and he's representing us right now. And he's been amazing, and he's so smart, and so we just love him. So we found out while he was doing some digging that 2 of the alternate jurors were switched with 2 of the regular jurors. And we were later contacted by a person who should have been a regular juror, and they did an affidavit, and they said, you know, they never would have said guilty, and no one would have changed their mind. So at the least, we would have had a hung jury, you know, and a mistrial, and we would have gotten a new trial. But that didn't come to light until after the guilty verdict. And then we found out that the foreperson was actually a anti-police activist. You know, they've been to different protests. They have all this published work on racism and anti-police and, you know, white privilege and stuff like that. So we're looking into that.
So someone who lied in their voir dire was something also very similar to what took place in Derek Chauvin's trial here in Hennepin County as well. So I know that there's a hearing coming up later this week on all of this. Tell us more about what you expect will happen there.
Well, I know that the foreperson has been subpoenaed to show up to the hearing, and the state is fighting that right now. You know, we haven't released any information. There haven't been any threats for this person. But they're trying to protect this person. They don't want him to show up to the hearing. They want it, so it's really frustrating. But we're expecting good news. You know, we're expecting to get a new trial. You know, Brad did not get a fair trial. So right now they're holding him unlawfully. The AG's office, you know, they're supposed to uphold the law, the U.S. Constitution, the New Mexico Constitution. And right now they don't care that they're violating Brad's civil rights by holding him because he did not get a fair trial.
Your husband served a decade with the Las Cruces Police Department. He completed 2 combat deployments in the U.S. Army as well. He's a father to your 2 young boys. As you said, the judge denied setting bond for him, so he has been in jail since February. How is he holding up? How's your family holding up?
I've told people if anyone can survive being in jail, it's Brad. We've been through deployments. He's been in really crappy situations before. Him and I, we're staying strong. We're holding in there, but our boys, it's been so tough on them. We have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and it's just been heartbreaking. Our youngest, he's waking up at night crying for dad, and it just breaks my heart. I can't fix it. I can't bring dad home, and it's been horrible for our family.
So just to keep the facts straight, the other officer falls, the suspect gets on top of the other officer, tries to grab his taser. During the struggle, the suspect could have easily incapacitated the other officer and your husband as well. Law enforcement experts have called this a clear-cut case of justified force. Yet the New Mexico Attorney General filed charges against your husband a year later. What role do you think politics have played in this case, Lacy?
The DA had the case, and they were just waiting on the toxicology report, which was not allowed in evidence in the trial. But they were waiting on that to make a decision. And so then the AG's office came in and they swooped up the case. No apparent reason. We know that the NAACP had talked here at our city council meeting saying they need to charge him. They need to do something about this because they're very well-connected people. And, I think that had a lot to do. They put pressure on the AG. We need to dig into that a little bit more and figure out what was the influence, why did he pick this up? So I think that has a lot to do with it. The AG is a very ambitious man. I think he was looking to further his career, move on up to maybe the presidential administration. So I think that has a lot to do with it, the NAACP and him wanting to get political points for this.
Having lived through all of this and with your family facing an uncertain future, why is it important for people to speak up about cases like this and not remain silent?
The AG has set a new precedent for all law enforcement in New Mexico. This is a dangerous new, era for policing. If you have to make the decision to save your life, now you can be charged and you can lose your livelihood and your liberty, and it's going to trickle down to the community. We've already had young officers saying that it's not worth it. Why should we do this job? Why should we help people? Because we can be charged. And it's really going to hurt our police officers and our community, and it's going to be bad.
We can tell you absolutely here in Minnesota that's the case as well. We live it every day. There is a fund set up to help the family. It's at pipehitterfoundation.org. I know where your husband's story is prominently featured. Lacy, we remain hopeful for you and your husband and your family. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate it. Thank you.
That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We will see you next time.